Welcome again, Your Excellency and Champion Chowdhury. Now, I want to ask Mr. Robert that after some arrests, recent time, after some arrests including journalists and social media activists, you and some other foreign diplomats, including US ambassador and European Union ambassador, they tweeted about the freedom of expression and freedom of media in Bangladesh. So can you please clarify your intention or the purpose? Why did you write so? Do you find any violation of freedom of expression or freedom of media in Bangladesh? Do you find that?
Well, our tweet didn't actually reference Bangladesh. Our tweet was simply a reminder to everybody, and we made this explicit in the tweet, that everywhere in the world, freedom of expression, media freedom is really important. And it's particularly important at a time when global populations are facing a massive threat, because in order for people to understand the environment in which they live and the decisions that they need to make, they need to have access to information. And it's very important that the media and independent voices are able to both explain the situation as it exists and also hold institutions of power to account. So we were simply reminding everybody that that is the case. And I don't think there should be a surprise in that, because for us in the British government, media freedom was a major campaign that we've been running over the last sort of year and a half. And we did a big conference in London last year, because all over the world, journalism and free media and independent voices are under threat. And we thought it was important in the context of the coronavirus here in Bangladesh to remind everybody.
So, Mr. Dixon, do you think that this is a regular diplomatic approach? I mean, is it very usual for the diplomats to tweet on social media? Because, yes, of course, can you please answer this?
I mean, there's two things I'd say. One is that it's very absolutely the job of a diplomat is to promote the views of his government in the country in which he's accredited. So it's completely normal for us to make clear what the views of our government are. The British government has been a very strong supporter internationally of free media for forever, but it is a particular campaign that we've been running over the last couple of years with our Canadian colleagues, in fact. And we're simply using Twitter because Twitter is the mouthpiece of the moment. I mean, Twitter is now a very good way, as we were reminded last week, of making sure that if you say something, lots of people hear it. And I think it's an important message, and Twitter happens to be the most effective mouthpiece in the 21st century. So our job is to promote the views of our government, and Twitter is the medium where we find we can do that most effectively.
Yes.
I think it's really normal. I mean, diplomats do this all the time. Diplomats are huge users of Twitter all over the world. And it's a completely normal thing for us to use this modern medium.
Yes, you're saying that it's completely normal, but I'm sure that you have observed that our Foreign Minister has reacted on this issue, terming this very unfortunate and unprecedented. And what will be your reply about that?
Well, I think with all due respect, it's not unusual, because our job as diplomats, and Shamsha, I'm sure, as a sort of former professional diplomat himself will say that it's the job of diplomats to represent and promote their country's views. And as I said, we use Twitter because Twitter is a good way of making sure that your views are heard. So I don't think there was anything unusual or inappropriate in this at all, if I'm honest. And I don't think there was anything surprising in the message, because, as I said, it's a basic principle in a democracy that independent voices should be heard. And it's a particular campaign that the British and Canadian governments have been running over the last couple of years. So I'm surprised there was any surprise.
Mr. Champion Chowdhury, what is your comment on this issue?
Well, very simply, I agree that the Twitter is now a modern mode of communication. At the same time, yes, and the British and other European countries have a long tradition of speaking up for the right to freedom of speech and expression. I hope they would apply it universally to every other country where it is being violated, and not choose one country. Because I don't hear of that much in many other countries. I don't hear that loudly in the case of Palestine, for example. That being said, I agree that it is a general position of the British government and their European allies to speak out in favor of the freedom of speech and expression. Although Twitter is an accepted mode of communication, I wonder if there was not an alternative source of communicating, like an email or a telephone call, without going public without it, because the moment you go public, governments tend to be defensive. Government tend to respond to that, and then this only creates a degree of bitterness and acrimony, which could have been avoided had it not been a more public way of expressing this thing. I don't disagree with the right to raise questions on freedom of speech generally, globally, universally. The question remains: could there not be a way where it does not force an open public reaction from the host government?
Any comment, Mr. Dickson?
Well, we were very explicit. The two things I'd say. One is that on the tweet itself, we were very clear that freedom of expression is a vital thing everywhere, and it's particularly important in the context of COVID. There was actually no reference in the tweet to Bangladesh. There was no criticism of Bangladesh. We simply made the point in a positive way that freedom of expression is extremely important. And as I say, I do think there is an increasing role for, as a diplomat, your job is to reach out. It's obviously your job to reach out to the government to which you're accredited, but it's also your job to make sure that your views are understood in the wider population. And we certainly could, and we often do make these points by phone call or by statement or whatever, but actually, Twitter, two sentences on Twitter, which is what we're talking about, obviously has provoked something of a public debate, which in many ways, I think in an environment where these things are important, I actually think that's not necessarily a bad thing, to be debating these issues openly.
So we have almost come to the end of the show. Let me ask you some personal question, Mr. Dickson. How is your quarantine time? How is your life during quarantine time?
Well, I must say it's very odd because, I'd been in Bangladesh for a year before quarantine started. And one of the things I absolutely love about being accredited in Bangladesh is the extraordinary energy and the degree to which people in Bangladesh, the fact that Bangladesh is a very sort of densely packed place gives it huge energy, a huge sort of vibrancy. And as a foreign diplomat, that is the most wonderful environment in which to be living and working. And I must say, I'm really missing it because now I'm sitting in my residence, which is very comfortable. It's got a very nice garden.
Are you missing iftar parties? It's Ramadan, so are you missing that?
I'm missing iftar parties, I'm missing dinners, I'm missing meetings, I'm missing all the things that I loved about being in Bangladesh have been deprived. And I'm really hoping that before too long, life will be back to normal because I'm one of the luckiest people in Bangladesh. I've got a fantastic garden, I've got a compound, I'm looking after somebody's dog, which gives me a companion. But it's not the same, I have to say. And I realize that most people in Bangladesh are having a really tough time for all sorts of reasons. And I'm very conscious that I'm very comfortable, I'm well looked after, but I'm really missing the life of Bangladesh that I was really loving before this lockdown began. And I hope for everybody's sake, particularly, of course, people in Bangladesh, poor people whose lives I recognise have been made much, much harder. But everybody, we want life back, the life back that we had until the end of February. And I really hope we can get that back soon.
Mr. Robert, how is your family in England?
They're fine. Actually, interestingly, my daughter has just become a doctor. So she was supposed to have a formal graduation ceremony, and she didn't. She had a graduation ceremony over Zoom, rather as we're having now. And then immediately she was put to work in an NHS hospital. So she's gone straight from being a medical student to being in the front line. And I'm very proud of that, having someone who is contributing directly right at the beginning of her medical career to combating this virus. And so far, I have to say, she seems to be coping very well, but it's obviously a bit of a worry.
Mr. Champion Chowdhury, anything else to ask?
Well, like Robert, I am not enjoying quarantine, but I'm lucky that I have a beautiful golf view from my apartment, which doesn't make me feel that much confined to home. But I'm missing normal life, going out, going to my country home, 2 hours away from Dhaka. But more important, I think, for all of us is to stay safe, stay well, especially the most vulnerable people. To Robert, I wish his daughter all the safety and all the best because she's now right in the front line in a country that has a major challenge.
So,
and all the best to you all.
Yes, of course. Eid is coming. So any Eid greetings for the viewers of DBC News? Mr. Champion Chowdhury.
Thank you very much. Eid greetings to you all.
Your Excellency, would you like to?
Yeah, a peaceful and a happy and a safe and a healthy Eid to everybody.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Your Excellency, for joining my show. Thank you, Champion Chowdhury. It was great to have you again in my show, Mr. Dickson, and hope to see you again in my show.